My wife left me and the kids behind for a wedding trip and came back like nothing was wrong, but now someone's accusing her of cheating. I am 47, and I have a comfortable and fulfilling life. I have a job I truly enjoy, live in a nice suburb, and am blessed with 3 wonderful children, 8M, 6F, 4F, and a lovely wife, Emily, 45F. I've always felt Emily and I were an ideal match. However, a recent email I received has deeply unsettled me and planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Emily lived in the UK between 2010 and 2015, during which time she pursued a PhD. Because she lived there so long, she developed many close friendships and has made it a point to return every couple of years to maintain those ties. This past August, she traveled to the UK for 3 weeks to attend the wedding of one of her close friends. After some consideration, we agreed that it would be best for me and the children to remain at home, as I could not take that much time away from work, and the children were unlikely to find much enjoyment in such an event. Emily departed, returned as expected, and life returned to normal for us. Last week, I received an email on my work email address. It was supposedly from the wife of Emily's friend. I'll call him Jake, 44M. According to this woman, she has a very strong reason to suspect that Jake and Emily engaged in an affair. She listed her suspicions, noting that Jake had picked Emily up from the airport, spent considerable time at her hotel, and that the two of them frequently went out to dinner alone. She even included pictures of my wife's earrings that she said she found in Jake's pockets when she was doing the laundry and pictures of a lipstick stain on a shirt. The color is one I recognize as something Emily often wears. There is some other evidence she listed, but for the sake of conciseness, I will not include it here. All this was a lot to absorb, and for a while, I thought it was some sort of joke, so I tried my best to ignore it. But it kept coming back into my mind. I remember that before her trip, my wife would talk to all her friends there. I don't know if this email is influencing my memory, but I think she probably spoke with Jake the most. Additionally, I know Emily never liked Jake's wife, though I can't say why. I've never pried into Emily's phone or social media accounts before, but I feel very tempted to now. However, I know I'd feel terrible if I looked and found nothing. Also, if I start acting suspicious, wouldn't she just delete everything out of fear of being found out? I am unsure of how to move forward and would welcome any guidance on handling this. The best I can currently come up with is asking to see her phone immediately after confronting her about it, so as to not give her time to delete anything, though part of me thinks this would upset her and potentially not even show anything. Top comments. Commenter. The other evidence bears listing. It's best to have all the facts as you understand them. Concision aside. OP's response. It isn't as solid as the other stuff she shared, which is why I decided to leave it out, but the other evidence is as follows. She said that every day Emily was there, Jake would either go see her or talk on the phone with her. She also said that whenever Jake was on the phone with Emily, he'd quickly hang up or leave the room if he noticed her. She mentioned they didn't even try to hide how much physical contact they had, as they'd always find an excuse to touch each other. They'd reminisce about old times a lot. She even mentioned the way they would look at each other. Commenter. I would show her the email you got and ask to see the phone right then and there. Her reaction will be telling. I think it warrants asking to see her phone. However, I'm not yet sold on it definitely being an affair. The lipstick stain proves absolutely nothing. She could have found or taken the earrings from somewhere else. How certain are you that they are actually your wife's? And the rest you put in the comments is purely just her word. She might just be causing trouble. OP's response. I'm 100% certain those are my wife's earrings, or at least a replica. I got them for her 2 years ago, on her birthday. She told me that she lost them while she was in the UK, since I noticed she wasn't wearing them when she got back. Update. 10 days later. A few hours after sharing my first post, I confronted Emily. She confirmed my fears. She claims she's in love with Jake and can't live a lie any longer. She still claims to love me and the kids but says she can't stay with us any longer. According to her, she was waiting for a better time to tell me and the children. Apparently, this has been going on since March, with Jake flying out here occasionally and Emily secretly meeting him. We're getting divorced. Emily is moving to the UK soon. She confirmed that in August. In addition to the wedding she attended, she had a job interview and is set to start around the new year. She's already applied for a British visa and plans to live with Jake once she moves. As for custody, Emily is voluntarily surrendering her chance of full custody. She doesn't want to uproot the kids, so they'll stay here in Canada with me. There's a part of me that appreciates that decision, but there's also a part that is astonished at how easily she's walking away. She wants to pay child support, but I'd rather raise my children without her financial influence. That said, the court will likely insist on support regardless of my feelings. Emily is also seeking structured visitation rights, which, given the circumstances, will likely be granted. Based on what I've been told, the court generally leans toward arrangements that allow both parents to maintain a relationship with the children, even when one is relocating to a different country. The lawyers are still working out the details, but it seems she'll have visitation during school breaks and holidays, with a possibility of virtual calls in between. I've been keeping things as amicable as possible, and the more cooperative I am, the more Emily seems to agree with my demands. We are also discussing the future of our home. Emily has expressed a desire to sell the property and divide the proceeds. While I am reluctant to part with a family home, it is unlikely I have much of a choice since it was bought during our marriage. For now, our lawyers are still working through the details, and no final decisions have been made. Given the situation, it could be a while before we reach a resolution. In the meantime, I've been advised not to make any major financial moves. As much as I want to stay here with the children, I know selling is most likely inevitable. As of this writing, Emily is in an Airbnb, and Jake has flown here to stay with her. They plan on traveling to the UK at some point in the near future. My lawyer tells me that adultery isn't grounds for special treatment when it comes to custody or property division. Therefore, it won't influence how assets are divided unless marital funds are directly involved. Emily likely used money from her personal account, and unless it can be proven she used our joint finances to fund the affair, it's unlikely this will make any difference in court. I've been in regular communication with Jake's soon-to-be ex-wife, Ellen, primarily through email, and more recently, we've spoken over the phone a few times. Ellen apologized, saying she felt guilty for telling me about the affair and worried that if she hadn't, maybe my marriage could have been salvaged. I reassured her that, for me, the gravity of the situation made divorce inevitable, and I'd rather not remain in the dark about something of this significance. She even sent me messages and other evidence of their relationship, but since Emily is openly admitting to the affair, it doesn't really matter in the context of the law. Ellen has also told me a lot about Jake. Apparently, this is the third time he's cheated on her, and she's had enough. There's no chance of reconciliation this time, she says, and he doesn't seem interested in trying. She mentioned that Jake has zero desire to raise children who are not biologically his, which explains why Emily's not fighting for custody. Ellen's divorce will most likely be much longer and more drawn out than mine, given that both she and Jake want full custody of their children and can't agree on several other issues. I haven't had much time to process everything. These past 2 weeks have felt like a blur in every way, but one thing I can say with certainty is that I have nothing left for Emily. Not because she betrayed our marriage, but because of how easily she's walking away from our children. I never thought I could hate someone I once loved so much. It's a strange feeling. The hardest part in all of this is the children. My 2 youngest daughters have started asking why their mother isn't around as much anymore, and it's been very difficult trying to communicate with them about the nature of the situation. My eldest seems to understand a little more, and as a result, he has become quiet and withdrawn. I'm fortunate to have a family that has been incredibly supportive so far. My children have received numerous thoughtful letters from some of their cousins, which I've been reading to them each night. All my siblings have also sent gifts for the kids, and one of my brothers, along with his wife, drove up to visit over the past weekend. My sister-in-law even prepared plenty of food, some of which is still in the freezer. They also kept the children entertained while I met with my lawyer. My other siblings have also offered to come by and look after the kids whenever I need them. Beyond that, my parents have been calling daily to check in on us, and my 78-year-old mother has already made plans to stay with us for 2 weeks in November to help around the house. The collective effort of my family has made this experience much more bearable, and I'm deeply grateful for all their support. To everyone who encouraged me to speak with Emily after my last post, I'm grateful. I was tempted to ignore Elon's message, but it kept gnawing at me. Your advice gave me the courage to act. Emily has shown herself to be a liar, and I have no doubt that her idea of a better time was simply when it would cause the least inconvenience for her and Jake. Second update, 1 month later. Think of this less as an update and more as a chance to vent a few things. Now that I've had more time to process my situation, I know that Emily often traveled back and forth to the UK during our marriage. She claims her affair with Jake only began in March 2024, but I'm convinced she's lying. It's almost certain that this has been going on for years, given how much she had already prepared by the time I confronted her. It's become clear to me and everyone else that she had been planning this for some time. In fact, within a few short days of our confrontation, she already had certain legal documents prepared. Additionally, Jake arriving in Canada shortly after I confronted Emily made it clear that they had planned for her to tell me roughly around this date in advance. It makes sense that Emily was well prepared and was just waiting for things to be better lined up for herself. After all, she long since applied for her visa, secured a job, secretly appraised her car, our family car, though it was under her name, and sent personal items with Jake to the UK during his secret visits, all right under my oblivious nose. I have a feeling I'm only scratching the surface and have no real idea of how far this actually goes. Not that Emily would ever tell me its depth. In addition to all of this, Emily had already been in touch with her lawyer long before I confronted her. Taking all this into account, it's hard not to wonder if she secured her job even earlier than she let on, perhaps to make her actions seem less calculated. Two of Emily's friends have since reached out to express shock and disappointment at her actions. One of them, Janet, mentioned that according to another friend, Emily had been consulting her divorce lawyer as far back as late August or early September. This other friend also confirmed my suspicion that Emily had been sending some of her belongings to the UK during Jake's visits. I've been losing sleep replaying the past few months in my mind. Maybe driving myself a little crazy, but certain things stand out. For example, when Emily went to the UK in August for the wedding, she was carrying 3 fully loaded suitcases. She told me that they were filled with presents for her friends. I didn't question it, even though it seemed a bit excessive at the time. When I picked her up from the airport after her trip, I noticed the bags were suspiciously light. I can assume that in addition to the job interview she claimed to attend, she transported a bunch of her personal items to the UK, which would explain why, since her return, she seemed to have been wearing a smaller selection of her clothing. Despite this, I was somehow blindsided, and I completely blame myself. Looking back, I can see there were signs I ignored, and I guess I didn't think Emily was capable of this sort of thing. A part of me wonders if this outcome could have been avoided entirely had I been more assertive and vigilant in the past. The worst part of all is that my children are now dealing with the consequences of my ignorance and stupidity. While I twiddled my thumbs, my wife had essentially started a new life. Most people in my life now know about my separation from Emily. I've stopped wearing my wedding band, and I've explained the situation to friends and colleagues who noticed its absence. One of my close friends and many others who reached out privately on Reddit have suggested I get DNA tests for the children, given Emily's travel patterns and tendency to lie. While I understand where they are coming from, this is something I'll never do. I'd never assign my children to another man. Nothing will change that. Life without Emily has thus far been difficult. Mornings have become a hectic rush between getting the kids ready and getting myself out the door. I'm barely on time for work for nearly half the week. It's frankly exhausting trying to keep up with all the extra parenting duties I have to perform throughout the day. Our current home has a large driveway, so on top of everything else, I'm already dreading the task of shoveling it once the snow starts falling. The kids are feeling the strain as well. They don't particularly like the food I prepare most days, and they hate how I'm always busy. It's incredibly frustrating to know that while we're here struggling, Emily recently departed for a relaxing vacation through Europe with Jake. Communication between us has dwindled, and I only learned of these developments recently. I have no idea if she plans to return to Canada after her vacation or settle directly into what will likely be a very comfortable life in the UK. On a more positive note, I was able to get the kids to see their doctor recently. She gave me a bunch of useful resources and advice. She placed an emphasis on how time and clear communication were the most important factors for their adjustment. While I'm optimistic, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried. It's still early, I know, but they remain quite upset about the entire ordeal and act out regularly as a result. It is abundantly clear that they're having a hard time adjusting to our new reality. Throughout all of this, my family has been a tremendous support. My mother arrived as promised early last week, and things have already become significantly easier. The kids enjoy her cooking and spending time with her. Her presence has also freed me to handle other tasks. Whenever the divorce is finalized, I plan to designate my eldest brother and sister-in-law as legal guardians for the children. They live relatively nearby and have already agreed to take on that role if needed, which brings me some peace of mind. However, I highly doubt this will be anytime soon, given my much busier schedule and Emily dragging her feet before traveling. The whole process has slowed to a snail's pace. One of the hardest aspects of all this has been making decisions about our family home. After considerable thought and speaking it over many times with my family, I'm leaning towards selling at this stage. Emily has already offered me a bit more than half of the proceeds since she sold our SUV right before leaving the country. My lawyer has noted that selling the SUV before we finalized anything was premature on her part, considering I contributed significantly, 40% to the purchase. He thinks I have strong grounds to seek reimbursement elsewhere in our asset division, which aligns with Emily offering more of the house. Getting more than half seems fair, given that I contributed about 65 to 70% of the down payment and monthly mortgage payments. As I mentioned above, the family SUV was registered in only her name. However, I cover about 40% of its cost, so it's frustrating she sold it unilaterally. As I've learned over the past several weeks, my sedan is too snug for the kids and inconvenient for my mother to duck in and out of when she runs errands. Therefore, I'll need to trade it for something larger. In return, Emily has graciously insisted that I keep the furniture and appliances, the least she can do, I suppose. As much as part of me would like to stay in our current home, it's probably better for us to move. Part of me hopes this will help us avoid future interference from Emily, though in reality, she's just as likely to interfere no matter where we are. I've been looking at townhouses closer to my place of work, which would cut down my commute and place us near a well-rated school. However, my sisters brought up that moving the kids now would mean changing schools and losing their friends, which would be yet another big change for them. An alternative option is that we move to a smaller, more manageable house close to our current one. This would reduce my workload and allow the kids to stay at the same school. Regardless of which option we choose, the idea of a new home without Emily's memory is appealing. Our current home's location is yet another example of how foolish and short-sighted I've been. Its location was much more convenient for Emily's commute compared to my own. It worked out for a time, as the children's school was close to Emily's work in case they needed her during the day, but now all of this is useless as my place of work is rather far. I heard nothing from Emily's family and, frankly, I have no interest in reaching out. As for Emily's future with Jake, I don't wish her relationship to fail. The longer her life is stable, the less likely she'll disrupt ours, but I take solace in knowing she remains unaware of Jake's infidelity history. I don't feel any moral obligation to warn her about Jake's character, and Eleanor feels the same way. I made a point to check in on Eleanor regularly. She doesn't have the same family support I do. Her immediate family is charmed by Jake's ample wealth and believes that she should do whatever it takes to keep him, even though it is clear that neither he nor Eleanor wants reconciliation. Update 1 month later. Hello, the main purpose of this post is to clarify a few things that have come up in my personal messages. I appreciate the concern and will use this opportunity to address many of these points at once. First, I'm still very much adjusting. I've accepted the situation, though I still feel bitter about it now and then. I'm adapting, and while some days are worse than others, I'm managing. All in all, my situation doesn't feel as overwhelming anymore. The kids are still adjusting. They're resilient, but they've been dealing with a lot. I'm considering enrolling them in a program designed to support children of divorced parents. I just need to find the time to properly research it once my work calms down a bit. On the topic of household dynamics, some people who have been messaging me seem to think that Emily was overburdened with chores and that somehow justified her decisions. To remove any misunderstandings before everything fell apart, the split on household chores hovered around 60/40, with her handling the larger portion. In contrast, living expenses were covered roughly 75% by me and 25% by her. Not to mention, Emily took far more solo vacations than I did. I guess we all now know how those went. Also, yes, I know how to cook. I've always been a health-conscious person, which meant the kids often preferred the way Emily prepared meals. Despite the many private messages suggesting otherwise, I still have no intention of DNA testing my children. Emily has settled into an apartment owned by Jake. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but apparently Jake owns an apartment in the city to avoid commuting during the week. According to Eleanor, he'd stay there and go back to his house on weekends to be with her and the children. Since his most recent affair has come to light, he's been living there full-time and only comes to the house to see his children. Eleanor also mentioned the apartment is the same place where he carried out his previous affairs, which is fitting, I guess. In other news, I finally replaced my sedan with a larger car. I spent much more than I probably should have, but it's been one of the few things bringing me joy lately. Lastly, many people have been messaging me to suggest that I have some sort of moral obligation to warn Emily about Jake's previous infidelity and the chance he may cheat on her. I don't think this is my responsibility. Maybe Emily already knows and just doesn't care. Update 2 months later. I decided to make a quick update as many people have been asking how the children and I have been faring. I apologize for not being able to do this sooner, as my current schedule does not allow much free time. So far, things are a bit better. Life has become easier since I hired a nanny to help around the house and with the children. With her handling a sizable portion of the weekly chores, I've been able to focus more on work. I do enjoy my job, but lately, I've been putting in longer hours to keep our finances in check. Between legal fees, the nanny's salary, and a car I probably spent too much on, my expenses have been adding up fast. The longer hours mean I see less of the kids, but I tell myself it's temporary. I try to make time for them on the weekends I'm not working, but even that's been difficult. They're adjusting slowly, though I know it'll be a long time before things feel even relatively normal, if they ever do. I'm still figuring out where we'll live long term. At this stage, the house will almost certainly be sold, and I want a place for myself and the kids that has no connection to Emily. Over the past few weeks, I've been speaking with Eleanor less and less. Part of it is my schedule, but mostly, I just don't see the point. Talking to her only reminds me of how good I had it before. The most important and annoying reason, however, is that Eleanor has decided to remain with Jake. She claims that he respects her somehow and has shown commitment to their family despite still being with Emily. According to her, he has demonstrated this commitment by prioritizing their children over his new relationship and by respecting her space. Considering how just a few months ago, she was adamant about going through with a divorce, yet now she's canceled these plans entirely. Then again, maybe I shouldn't be surprised by her own admission that this isn't Jake's first affair, and she's always forgiven him in the past. Emily still lives in an apartment Jake owns, while Eleanor remains in the family home with their children. Jake splits his time between the two, staying at the apartment during the week and coming home on weekends and sporadic weeknights. At the very least, Eleanor has made it clear that Emily isn't allowed in the family home, and Jake seems to respect that. Emily rarely calls the kids during the week, and when she does, the conversations are brief, and she tends to whisper a lot since these calls take place rather late in her time zone. I imagine she doesn't want to disrupt Jake's sleep. On weekends, when Jake is with his own family, Emily makes more of an effort to talk to the children. However, these calls haven't been particularly long either, as I have felt they shouldn't interrupt the time I planned with the children. All of this is still very much a work in progress, which hopefully will get easier as time goes on. While a part of me is still shocked by how things turned out, I think I have largely woken up to this new reality. Top comments. Commenter 1. The ex-wife's AP must be as smooth as silk to still maintain his wife whom he's cheated on 3 times and still snag OP's ex-wife. I think the blessing in disguise is that the ex-wife blew up everything for a man who will never be loyal to her. She threw away her vows and her kids to satisfy something that doesn't even exist. OP is better off without someone so deliberate and strategic in her backstabbing. I really hope OP continues to do his best and that the kids are as resilient as he says. It'll be hard regardless. I also doubt that 5 or 10 years from now, the ex-wife will crawl back wanting a relationship with the kids. OP has to be ready. Commenter 2. She abandoned her children to be a weekend mistress. How tragically awful. The fact that Eleanor is a willing participant and stays with this pathetic excuse for a month is also disgusting. Jake is a cancer and needs to be rooted out. Commenter 3. Weekday mistress. The real family gets his time off. Commenter 4. His real family gets weekends, holidays, birthdays, and vacations. The mistress gets weekdays and any time his family doesn't need him. No wonder he doesn't want to deal with her kids. He barely deals with her.